Hit your hammer.
We don't need it there. Everybody's quiet. It's good.
Right.
So everyone has the agenda, I presume, or had a chance to read it. Any changes? And if not, could we get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. Everyone got the very comprehensive minutes. Thank you.
Yeah.
From last month's meeting.
Like weekend reading, you did good.
Like War and Peace.
Really is. More war than peace.
Were there any changes to the minutes, suggestions? Otherwise, motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Wait, hold on, there was, I just was finding it.
Okay.
On page 12, you are referred to as EV Springs versus Squires, if that matters.
They'll let me know about that one. I guess it's just been on my mind. Springs.
Other than that, great.
A motion and a second. With that one change, all in favor?
Aye.
All righty. We're up to the one item we have on the agenda, which is the discussion about special use permit process and consideration of a draft ordinance amendments.
Chris, you recall at the March meeting, we discussed special use permits and the role that planning board has in that. And I told you I would follow up with the draft ordinance. And so I've done that and looked through the code and look at the various sections where it refers to the planning board and their role as advisory capacity for special use permits. And so the draft ordinance, you'll see the highlighted marks. It's all the various sections of the code combined into one. And any new text is underlined, and anything that needs to be removed has been struck through. And tried to make it work, flow the way that it should. If you decide to move forward with this, it would go to council and would be in a more formalized ordinance format. But also, this is what the consensus was at the time, and if you'd like to discuss it any further before making or considering any kind of motion, that's fine too. But your role would still be advisory for conditional zoning, and you'd still have that role. And you still serve as the watershed review board, and then you would be advisory for code changes as well. And any other special studies, whether it be long range planning or code amendments, you still have a role in that. So,
Can I ask some questions for clarification / education of me? When I looked at the first paragraph, it says, it shall conduct its meetings so as to obtain necessary information and to promote the full and free exchange of ideas. Is that in reference to the planning board, or is it in reference to the larger community?
are you talking about the first page?
Yeah, where you get 16, yeah, see now I need glasses, 16-3.1-2, whatever that is right there.
Meetings of the planning board?
Yes.
It's for meetings of the planning board.
So that refers to this group.
Just
Exchange
your meetings
and-
and how you conduct your business. And all parts of Article 3 are specific. Article 3 are administrative mechanisms that, with planning board, board of adjustment, and BRAC. And there's also reference in there for the land use administrator, which would be me, and town council, and each one of the roles in administrating the land use code. The parts that I pulled out are specific to planning board.
That's helpful. The other one is the planning board only place that the public has a chance to speak about things if they don't have standing?
As it relates to quasi judicial,
As it relates to permits and changes in code and projects and,
So it's one of the steps. It's the advisory. There's an opportunity for people to speak at the planning board in an advisory capacity. In your role as advisory, there's that opportunity, but the public hearing, anything that's changed goes to a public hearing, and that's held at council.
then my understanding of the public hearing though is you have to have standing in order to speak at a public hearing. Is that accurate or inaccurate?
Depends on the type of public hearing. If it's a quasi judicial, yes. If it's legislative, like a conditional zoning or a code amendment or any other type of public hearing, anyone can speak. They don't have to live in town. But if it's quasi judicial in nature, dealing with a special use permit for council, if it's a hearing for a variance or an appeal, that's Board of Adjustment, again, you've got to have standing. But that's for those cases where sworn testimony is required, those kind of things, yes.
Thank you. That helps.
Did you want a motion?
I think as the way Kevin was framing this, let's have any discussion or questions first, if there were any others.
That kind of gets at the meat of the problem. When we're letting people speak about an issue that is going to a quasi judicial hearing, we're doing things that they're not able to do in the hearing. So it creates problems.
That's what I was trying to tease out is who's confused.
It creates an expectation that if I speak on a special use permit at planning board, I'm going to have the same opportunity at council. And when they get to council, they find out that there are limitations on that, and then they leave disappointed that they didn't have the same opportunity. Now, that's quasi judicial, special use permits. If it's legislative, like a conditional zoning, like last month we dealt with the Laurel, it's wide open. Not only can you speak during the public hearing, you can speak about the project freely in a legislative decision outside the meeting. But there's just no decisions made outside the meeting anyway. But it opens up that dialogue. And like we had the neighborhood meeting for that. And we generally have a neighborhood meeting. It's up to the applicant, their opportunity to share with the neighborhood and the general public kind of what they're wanting to do with the property. And then we get more formalized when we get to planning board, and then public hearing is, council is one step above that.
Last question for me is, how does the public get educated about the quasi judicial process versus the open meeting versus when they can and cannot speak, I guess? How do they know that?
They ask questions or read about it.
It seems like the confusion comes from what can I do and where can I do it? And the solution is reducing the option for them to speak.
All those times they're just fleshed out in a meeting. If there's not a case pending, no one really cares. But when there's a case being presented, if it's quasi judicial, it's going to have a stricter path through the process. Sworn testimony, expert testimony, people with standing. If it's legislative and a conditional zoning, it's a little more wide open. There's a lot of opinions. And the council ultimately makes a decision that they feel is best, not whether or not it meets the code, but does it fit the community? Is it align with the comprehensive plan when they make a decision related to that? So it's a little bit different. And how people get educated, they call me, they call our office, they ask the questions, they ask them in a public forum, and I guess it is confusing. It's land use law and land use decisions are confusing, and we try as best we can to make it clear. And that's, as staff, that's our role. And as a board represents the community, that's your role too.
Now, this is my last question. What is the logic behind not putting special use permits into conditional zoning, but keeping those two things separate?
State law.
Oh, well, that helps. Never mind.
And a few years ago, they rewrote the entire general statutes dealing with land use and made clear distinctions, because there were, at one time, there was just special use permits, or they were called conditional use permits in a lot of jurisdictions across North Carolina. And then you would have a rezoning, and a rezoning would change the zoning of your property, and then you still had to go back through a process to get an approval. Then, late 80s, part of the 90s, there was conditional use zoning. So you would zone the property to a conditional use district, but you still had to go back through and get a conditional use permit to finish the project. So it was a two-step. And then there were some, Charlotte and Greensboro and some others started doing a new type of rezoning that was conditional zoning. And ultimately, the General Assembly said, we're going to let everybody do that. Where you're just not doing a straight rezoning that you don't tie use to it. You're going to do conditional rezoning that your whole site plan and your building design, everything is wrapped up into one decision. And so you're creating your own zoning district on your piece of property that has all the conditions listed, all the plans, everything is one package. And that's what you're going through, a legislative process to get that approved. So that's the big explanation of how it works. And when they rewrote Chapter 160D of the general statutes, they made clear distinctions. Anything quasi-judicial is special use permit. Anything conditional zoning is going to be called conditional zoning. So the two terms, conditional and special, are separated in their particular type of process.
Thank you for indulging my questions.
That's great. It's
Good question.
good for everybody to hear that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Kevin before we entertain a motion? Okay. Someone like to make a motion? I know we can have more discussion after a motion in a second, but
Motion to approve the amendment as presented.
I'll second that, although I have a couple of comments.
okay. We have a motion and a second, so discussion, and why don't we start with your comments?
I think you did a good job, Kevin, in extricating the planning board from special use permits. But as a former land use lawyer who has written ordinances, there are a couple, in my mind, a couple of inconsistencies in the underlying document in references to, should it be town council or should it be board of commissioners? Which is it?
Board of Commissioners officially.
If it's officially Board of Commissioners, I noticed that in what you gave us here, there are 2 times it's referred to as Town Council, 5 times it's referred to as Board of Commissioners, and 3 places it's referenced as just the board, not to be confused with the planning board. So I think we need to be very, very specific about making those additional changes on the underlying document. I'd be glad to go through them very quickly if you want me to point them out.
Yeah, let's have it.
Let's have it. I think where I first saw a reference to the board in section 16-3.1.5.1, as well as 5.2 and 5.3, there's reference to the board, and I think that should say Board of Commissioners, not to be.
So these are existing, this is
This
existing.
is existing in the ordinance. It's
Phil rewrote it for us, so
Well,
blame him.
This is not blame, I'm just saying we ought to go back and make it consistent from the original document. So my recommendation would be to also change in those 3 places, reference Board of Commissioners, so as not to be confused with the planning board.
So in those 3, that first page, those are all planning board, where it says, because it's listed under powers and duties of the planning board, so those are all
I understand, but then it says make studies and recommend to the board, which should say Board of Commissioners. Obviously, that's what it means, but it should say Board of Commissioners 3 times there.
Okay.
I'll second that as a first-time reader. I had to go back a few times to.
There are just a couple more minor things in section 16-4.9.2. Obviously, you want to capitalize the T and the if you're starting the paragraph with the. Same comment in 16-4.10.1. Again, capitalize the T and the at the beginning of the sentence. And lastly, in 16-21.4.1, as well as 4.2, there's reference to town council. That should also say Board of Commissioners in order to be consistent. And those are my suggested revisions.
Gotcha. All right.
Along those lines, I had a few more. 2 of them are substantive. Let's start with those. 16-4.10.2.
Final action.
The first line of reference is paragraph A. That be required in section 16.4.10.1.
Let me see if something was left out, but. Yeah, I think that's probably left over from before these were codified, as in numbers, there were listed. So yeah, that probably should just make reference to that paragraph.
And then the third line where it references paragraph C, I think that should be 16-4.10.3.
Got it.
And then the non-substantive stuff is exactly along the lines of what Steve was just saying with the Board of Commissioners. Planning board's referred to planning board lowercase, planning board uppercase, board lowercase, and I think that's it in different ways. We could either define it in the very first meetings of the planning board and define it as board, capital, or not capital, whichever, or change everywhere where it says board to just say planning board throughout, and then decide whether you want it capitalized or not capitalized. It's both ways in here right now.
Yeah. It's a mess. I agree.
I mean, as long as we're up to it, it should be.
Yeah, that's.
No, I got no problem with that. I like consistency. I would suggest that all of them be planning board capitalized throughout. And if it's not covered in this draft ordinance, and if it's approved, we'll also do clerical corrections throughout the code and get,
That'd be great.
Yeah, that would be.
which don't require them. Okay. Good stuff. Thank you.
Or discussion or comments? I know we talked about this last month a little bit. So you may have exhausted your comments on this last month, but if there are any other thoughts you want to share, Bill, may I presume that your motion and Steve's second are amended to include the 7 changes that Steve had, the 2 plus clerical that Brandon had?
Correct.
Yep. All right. One more comment.
Okay.
And I just want to go on record as saying I fully support the idea of taking planning board out of special use permits, but I do hope that we will be moving the town toward either eliminating or severely restricting special use permits generally.
Next on your list.
It's on the list. I don't know if it's next, but it's certainly on the list of coming out of retreat is to dive deeper into identifying the limit and scope, if any, for special use permits going forward. Personally, in my role, I think there is a place for them here. But I think there's interest in digging in and seeing where it applies best. And,
If we remove it from our purview, it all is the town council then would make the decision about getting rid of them altogether or the next steps. Is that what you're saying, Kevin?
yes, yeah, every ultimate decision would rely with the council.
The ultimate, but it would start here.
Yeah.
correct?
Yes.
We would develop that list and send, as a recommendation and send it to council.
That's right.
And this is, I was going to do this after we had the vote, but since we're having a discussion now, I mean, this, I think the summary that Bill provided last month, that there's 300 whatever here compared to 5 or whatever the number, single digit number was in Boone, is pretty glaring.
Yeah.
So I think that our opportunity then would be, when the time's appropriate, whatever, hopefully sooner rather than later, but to make the recommendation to the town council about, hey, instead of 310, here are the ones that really should truly be special use permit. Or
There's some repeats in our use table that are not so different from one another that there should be some that eliminated as a use and further clarified at the type of use they really are. Our use table is really antiquated and it needs some work.
Since we're on this, I was going to wait until after the vote, but are you planning at some point to come to us with a updated use table?
Yes.
At some point, I know it's.
is that,
Yeah, I think that the use table, if we didn't change the assignment, whether it be special use or zoning permit, if we didn't even change that, the code, the use table itself needs to be streamlined a bit as far as the uses that are listed. We have to be careful not to remove uses from districts that would be considered downzoning by taking opportunity away from business districts. But some of them need to be clarified because they're somewhat redundant or repetitive in a way that there's not a distinguishing factor between two uses. But that's part of it. And then the other would be, all right, where should we assign special use and where should they be limited, if any?
Fits into the other question I was going to ask you is, from last month when was option 4, what we're talking about tonight, there was, leave as is, remove special use permits entirely, and the other options. Has anybody looked into, and I was hoping Joey would be here, but whether removing special use permits, for example, would that be a downzoning? Or just downzoning?
That's that question too. There's not a real clear answer. But as we start into this, we'll make sure that we're on solid legal ground to make it. I know I think you're referring to, if the only way that I can go through to get an approval is conditional zoning, is that downzoning my opportunities in another way? And I think this is what you're asking. If I'm going special use and the code is my target and I meet every aspect of the code, I should have an expectation that if I meet it, I should get approval. But if I'm forced to go on conditional zoning and then the approval is at every whim of the public, then does that curtail my opportunities for development of my property?
Exactly. And there's more cost and steps, et cetera, involved for a property owner with conditional use, or conditional zoning, excuse me.
All right, so how about we take a vote, and if there's more discussion, we can have that more discussion. So we have a motion to approve recommended changes to the code with additional suggestions that have been offered this evening here. We have a motion and a second for that. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? I don't think so. All right, so thank you. Yeah, so old business, I guess any other questions for Kevin that are not project specific maybe, but not about pending projects anyway?
And you guys may not be familiar with what we were just talking about, downzoning and the problems with Senate Bill 382 and all the problems that created. 4 text amendments, so.
I wrote it down and was going to do my own. But if you want to share, go right ahead. Sounds like you were awesome.
Former planning director knows.
Bill, explain it, Bill.
The legislature last year, and it was included in a larger bill. It wasn't targeted just at text amendments, but basically said that downzoning would not be permitted anymore. So everybody's in a panic of, oh, I can't make a text amendment. Because if it makes the text of the code more restrictive, then we can't do it. So it's snowballed into a big mess. Most jurisdictions across the state have immediately filed bills trying to get out of it, and none of that was looked at or considered. So I guess when the legislature goes back into session, surely they will take that issue back up again. Because everybody's at a standstill. If you were in the middle of rewriting your ordinance, you're at a standstill right now. You can't adopt your new ordinance because there's so many, every little intricate change in there there could be 1,000 pieces of those changes that could negatively affect a piece of property. And you're not able to do it.
What was the Senate bill number you referenced?
382.
It was approved in December of '24, a month after we adopted code changes for downtown. The new Town Center East, Town Center West, new setbacks. And we spent a lot of time on that. In fact, it goes back to 2018 when we had our first subcommittee. But when we finally got it done in November of '24, established new districts, new setbacks and everything, and then we had the bulk of it done. We still have some other things we'd like to do, but it was retroactive, 6 months. The General Assembly, the state law, so it caught us. It just makes it difficult, and we're trying to do things for our town, to protect what we have, and still allow people to use their property and develop their property. So we weren't trying to do anything that would prevent people from using it, but we were trying to do things that would make sense. In fact, we decreased the setback on the east side of Main Street because most of the buildings are built up close to the street. We said, look, instead of a 15-foot, let's go with a 5-foot setback. So at least we gain a little space off the sidewalk where people want to put, they build across the street, they want to put a bench or display. It's not encroaching to our sidewalks, but so we've been in a holding pattern for a long time.
Thank you for that. That's helpful.
Are there any committee reports? We have a subcommittee.
What's the subcommittee? What subcommittee?
Workforce.
Oh, workforce.
So, workforce housing, it's kind of old.
Good.
It's just in a holding pattern.
Okay. Just wanted to hear it out loud.
I wondered if, Kevin, you might just run down some of the projects that, what the status of some of the projects that we've approved, like the townhouses on Valley Boulevard on the north end, or the project between Pine and Laurel, or the initial phase of Shops on the Parkway.
Okay, Pine and Laurel, I call it Laurel and Pine because the fourth time through, they changed the name. They have submitted permit applications, fees, final building plans, so they're within a couple of weeks of starting. Shops on the Parkway, they're prepared to submit building plans at any time. They're just working through finalization of those. The townhomes project there on between Main and 321. I talked to the builder, and I think maybe some of it's funding or timing. I'm just kind of in a holding pattern there for them. One of the bills the General Assembly passed maybe last year that froze or stopped the clock on all permits, meaning that if you had approval in 2024, your approval was good until the end of 2027. So your vested right extended at least through the end of the year of 27. Y'all asked a lot of times when we'd sit in here about the lodge project down there, or the old Scotchman, and I'd say, I don't know. Well, they're getting real close. They actually built the building and they're getting ready to repave if they haven't today. And so that's going to be that's a nice project. It's turned out well.
What are you hearing about Holiday Inn? I heard by the end of this month.
They are really working fast now. I mean, they've got a lot of people out there. They had a new contractor come in about 3 weeks ago, and they've just taken off. So
Another, the plumbing, I think, was finalized this week, so I think they're getting back.
yeah,
The question was about what property?
Holiday Inn. They had to tear up all,
Yeah.
grade and dig up all their stormwater and their sewer pipes and replace. They've got retaining walls going back in and new curbing and parking lot. So it's
What are you hearing, if anything, on the butcher shop or Savannah Oyster House?
butcher shop. I don't know. He's working. He's working. It's just, there's no meat in there right now. And then Savannah's, they're working. I talked to Chuck Ludicky the other day. It's not going to be Savannah, it's going to be something else, but like a taco kind of place.
Disco Taco.
Let's go taco.
Is that what they said?
Molly.
Where is that?
Savannah's.
Okay, yeah. And as far as the Laurel project, it will come back in May or June. To council. Yeah.
Sounds like a good place for planning board to meet at.
Is there anything else you want us to know, Kevin? Probably a lot of things, but in context of this meeting.
No, I'm good. I'm good. We're right on time.
That's consensual.
Take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, all in favor? We're adjourned. Thank you.
Quick.